Hey you. Yes, you listening right now. Let me tell you something. The day my husband demanded a DNA test, I thought my life was over. Not because of what he suspected, but because of what we discovered. It wasn't just betrayal. It was chaos wrapped in love, pain mixed with hope, and a truth so wild it still makes me cry when I think about it. If you've ever doubted your choices, questioned trust, or wondered if happiness is possible after heartbreak, stick around. This story, it's messy, raw, and real, and maybe, just maybe, it'll help you find your own way forward. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I promise this ride won't disappoint. Okay, let's rewind to where it all began. My name's Sophie Adler, or at least, that's what I go by these days. Back then, I was living in Boston, nestled in a cozy brownstone apartment with Daniel Harper, my husband of 5 years. On paper, we were golden. Daniel, the ambitious corporate attorney who could charm a jury blindfolded, and me, the creative interior designer who turned bland spaces into dream homes. People envied us. Hell, sometimes even I envied us, at least from afar. But here's the thing about perfect lives. They're often built on quicksand. We'd been trying for a baby for 2 long years. 2 years of doctor visits, hormone shots, tears cried into bathroom sinks, and late-night conversations filled with hope and exhaustion. So when the pregnancy test finally came back positive, I felt like I'd won the lottery. For the first time in forever, I allowed myself to dream, to imagine tiny footprints on our hardwood floors and nursery walls painted soft pastel colors. But dreams have a funny way of twisting into nightmares when you least expect it. Let me tell you about Daniel. He's intense. Not in a bad way, necessarily, but more like a storm brewing under calm skies. He thrives on control, schedules, plans, spreadsheets for everything from grocery shopping to vacation itineraries. At first, I found it endearing. Who wouldn't want someone so organized, so dependable? But as the years went by, his need for order started chipping away at my sense of freedom. Like the time I suggested painting our kitchen teal instead of gray, and he spent an hour explaining why gray was more practical. Or how he insisted I quit freelancing to focus on building a stable career, even though designing brought me joy. Then there's Maya Torres, my best friend since college. She's the exact opposite of Daniel, free-spirited, impulsive, and always pushing me to take risks. Maya once told me, "Soph, you deserve fireworks, not just a steady flame." At the time, I brushed her off, thinking she didn't understand what true partnership looked like. Now, I'm not so sure. Anyway, fast forward to the pregnancy. When I told Daniel the news, I expected him to sweep me off my feet, maybe crack open a bottle of champagne. Instead, he stood there, frozen, staring at the ultrasound picture like it held some kind of secret code. That's when I noticed the first crack, the faintest shadow of doubt flickering across his face. The weeks after the positive test were supposed to be magical. We attended our first prenatal appointment together, holding hands while Dr. Evan Porter, our fertility specialist, explained the next steps. Everything seemed fine until Daniel asked, a little too casually, if paternity tests were routine during pregnancies. My stomach dropped. Why would you even ask that? I snapped, louder than I intended. He shrugged, avoiding eye contact. Just covering all bases, sophomore. You know how much this means to me. To him, maybe. But to me, it felt like a slap in the face. Still, I chalked it up to nerves. After all, Daniel had been through hell alongside me during those 2 years of infertility treatments. Maybe he just needed reassurance. Except, it wasn't just nervousness. A few nights later, I caught him scrolling through old photos on my phone, specifically ones from my trip to London last spring. That's when the second crack appeared. "You never mentioned seeing Ryan," Daniel said, his voice icy. Ryan, my ex-boyfriend from college. The one who moved to London years ago and hadn't crossed my mind in ages, until I ran into him briefly during a layover. It was nothing. I protested. We grabbed coffee, caught up, and that was it. But Daniel didn't believe me. And honestly, his mistrust stung worse than anything else. Episode 4, the demand that changed everything. Here's where things get juicy, or devastating, depending on how you look at it. A week later, Daniel sat me down at the kitchen table. His expression was unreadable, like he was steeling himself for battle. "I want a paternity test," he said flatly. I blinked. Once. twice, then laughed nervously, hoping this was some twisted joke. But nope. His jaw tightened, and I realized he was dead serious. Are you kidding me right now? I shot back, anger bubbling up. You really think I'd cheat on you? With Ryan of all people? It's not about Ryan, he muttered, refusing to meet my eyes. It's about being certain. Certain. As if certainty could fix whatever was broken between us. That night, I called Maya, sobbing into the phone. She listened patiently before delivering her trademark wisdom. Sophie, sometimes people don't doubt others because they're guilty. They doubt because they're scared. But that doesn't mean you should tolerate it. Her words stuck with me. Because deep down, I knew she was right. After that conversation with Maya, I decided to give Daniel the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just stressed. After all, starting a family is a big deal. But as the days passed, his behavior only got worse. He started asking questions about my past, probing into details I hadn't thought about in years. One evening, over dinner, he casually mentioned reaching out to Ryan via email. You did what? I nearly choked on my pasta. It's fine, he said, waving a hand like it was no big deal. I just wanted to clarify things. Clarify what, Daniel? That I'm not some scheming adulterer. He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said enough. Doubt had taken root in him, and nothing I said could uproot it. Meanwhile, I felt like I was drowning, fighting to prove something I shouldn't have had to prove in the first place. That's when I started questioning everything. Was our marriage built on trust, or just appearances? Did Daniel ever truly believe in me, or was he always waiting for me to mess up? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Episode 6, the photo that broke us. Things came to a head when Daniel found an old photo on my phone. A candid shot of Ryan and me hugging outside a cafe in London. It wasn't anything scandalous. We were just catching up, laughing about old times. But to Daniel, it might as well have been a crime scene photo. This doesn't look innocent to me, he snapped, shoving the phone toward me. Are you kidding me right now? I shouted back. We hug because we're friends, Daniel. Friends hug. But logic wasn't going to win this fight. His insecurities had spiraled completely out of control, and suddenly, every little thing I did felt like evidence in his imaginary trial against me. I couldn't take it anymore. That night, I packed a bag and stayed at my sister Eleanor's place in Cambridge. Eleanor is the practical one in the family, the type who always has a spreadsheet for emergencies. She listened patiently as I vented, then gave me the advice I desperately needed. Sophie, you can't fix someone else's issues. All you can do is decide what's best for you. Her words hit hard. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider leaving. Not because I wanted to punish Daniel, but because I deserved better than this constant scrutiny. The paternity test results would take 3 weeks to process. 3 agonizing weeks where neither of us knew what the future held. During that time, Daniel tried apologizing, sort of. I just need to know the truth, Sophie, he pleaded one evening when he showed up unannounced at Eleanor's house. Can't you understand that? No, Daniel, I can't understand that. I shot back. Because if you trusted me even a little bit, none of this would be happening. He looked like he'd been slapped, but honestly, good. Maybe feeling some of the pain he'd caused would wake him up. Meanwhile, I threw myself into work, pouring my emotions into designing spaces that reflected peace and healing. Clients loved the new energy I brought to projects, though they didn't realize it came from heartbreak. As the days ticked by, I began imagining different futures, not just ones with Daniel, but ones without him too. What would it feel like to start fresh? To build a life based on trust instead of suspicion? These thoughts scared me, but they also excited me in a way I hadn't felt in years. 3 weeks, 18 days to be exact. That's how long it took for me to go from furious to numb. I stopped crying over Daniel's accusations and started wondering why I'd stayed so long in the first place. Sure, he was smart, driven. And yes, there were moments when his intensity felt like passion, but at what cost? During those weeks, Maya kept checking in on me, dragging me out for coffee or wine nights where we'd talk about everything except my crumbling marriage. You're stronger than this, she'd say, her voice firm but kind. You don't need someone questioning your every move to feel valuable. But it wasn't just Daniel's behavior that haunted me, it was mine too. How many times had I silenced myself to keep the peace? How often had I let his opinions override my own instincts. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Staying wasn't just about him anymore. It was about whether I still recognized the person I'd become. And then, one rainy afternoon, Eleanor dropped a bombshell. She'd been quietly researching legal options for me, just in case I decided to leave for good. "Divorce isn't failure, Sophie," she said gently. "Sometimes it's survival." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Survival. Was that what this was now? As I wrestled with the idea of leaving Daniel, memories of our early years together came flooding back. Memories I'd buried under layers of resentment. I remembered our first date, sitting by the Charles River as the sun dipped below the skyline. Daniel had talked passionately about justice, fairness, and making the world a better place. Back then, I believed in his ideals. Hell, I believed in him. But somewhere along the way, his idealism turned into paranoia, his passion into control. Then there was the time I told him I wanted to expand my design business. Instead of supporting me, he rattled off statistics about failure rates for small businesses. "Think practically, Sophie," he'd said. So I did, and shelved my dreams indefinitely. These flashbacks made me realize something painful. I hadn't just lost trust in Daniel. I'd lost pieces of myself along the way. That realization scared me. If I left him, could I find those pieces again? Or were they gone forever? Just when I thought things couldn't get any messier, guess who showed up in Boston? Ryan. Of course. It wasn't planned. I ran into him completely by accident at a cafe near Harvard Square. He looked older, wiser, but still had that easy charm that used to make my heart skip a beat. When he saw me, his face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Sophie Adler," he exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. "What are the odds?" We spent the next hour catching up over lattes. Ryan told me about his life in London, his recent breakup, and how much he missed the simplicity of Boston. In return, I gave him the Cliff's Notes version of my marital drama, minus the DNA test drama. I wasn't ready to share that yet. By the end of our conversation, I felt lighter, like talking to him had lifted some invisible weight off my shoulders. As we parted ways, he smiled and said, "Whatever happens, Sophie, remember you deserve happiness. Don't settle for anything less." His words lingered in my mind long after he left. Maybe because they reminded me of something I'd forgotten, or maybe because deep down, I wondered if he could be part of my future after all. Of course, nothing stays hidden forever, not even chance encounters over coffee. A few days later, Daniel confronted me about seeing Ryan. Somehow, he'd seen photos of us together on social media. Thanks, Maya, for tagging me. His reaction was explosive. "You're unbelievable," he yelled, pacing our living room like a caged animal. "All this time, you've been playing innocent while sneaking around behind my back. Are you serious right now?" I shot back, incredulous. "We ran into each other by chance, Daniel. And FYI, you have no right to accuse me of anything until those damn test results come back." For once, he didn't argue. He just stood there, fists clenched, looking like a man teetering on the edge of a cliff. Later that night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I realized something. Waiting for the results wasn't just torturing Daniel, it was destroying me too. No matter what they said, our marriage was already broken beyond repair. Finally, the day arrived. The envelope containing the paternity test results sat on our kitchen counter like a ticking time bomb. Daniel insisted we open it together, probably because he wanted to see my reaction when his worst fears were confirmed. I agreed, but only because I wanted closure. Whatever was inside that envelope, it would change everything. Neither of us spoke as Daniel tore it open with trembling hands. His face went pale as he scanned the page, then darker as realization sank in. He looked at me, confusion and anger swirling in his eyes. "It's not mine," he said flatly, tossing the paper onto the counter. I picked it up, my own hand shaking. My eyes darted across the clinical language until I found the line that mattered. Biological father identified as Dr. Evan Porter. Wait, what? My brain short-circuited. Dr. Evan Porter, the kind fertility specialist who guided us through IVF treatments. The man who'd reassured me when I cried after failed cycles. The man I trusted implicitly. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "This has to be a mistake." But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Memories flooded back. A blurry night months ago, after yet another failed round of treatment. I'd gone to dinner with Dr. Porter to decompress, and one glass of wine turned into several. Details were hazy, but I remembered leaning on him for support, feeling vulnerable and raw. Daniel stared at me, betrayal etched across his face. "So what? You slept with him too?" "I didn't sleep with him," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. I don't even remember what happened that night, but Daniel wasn't listening. He stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Alone, I sank to the floor, clutching the test results like they might burn me. How had it come to this? How could something meant to bring life, my pregnancy, have shattered everything I thought I knew about trust, love, and myself? Over the next few days, chaos erupted. Daniel filed a formal complaint against Dr. Porter, accusing him of misconduct. News spread quickly. Within hours, the hospital placed Dr. Porter on administrative leave, pending an investigation. Meanwhile, I became public enemy number one in Daniel's eyes. Every glance, every word felt like daggers. I called Maya, sobbing uncontrollably. "What do I do? Everyone thinks I'm some cheating liar." "You focus on you," she said firmly. "This isn't your fault, Sophie. You didn't plan any of this. But now you have to decide, are you going to let other people's opinions dictate your life, or are you going to take control?" Her words hit home. For once, I needed to stop worrying about everyone else and figure out what I wanted. A week later, I met with Dr. Porter at a quiet cafe outside the city. He looked wrecked, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped. When he saw me, guilt washed over his face. "Sophie, I am so sorry," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never intended for any of this to happen. That night, I thought you were just upset, and I offered comfort. One thing led to another, and by the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. I assumed the clinic protocols would handle confidentiality properly. I had no idea." His voice trailed off, but I understood. This wasn't malicious, it was reckless. Painful, yes, but not calculated. "I need to know," I said quietly. "Did you know about the pregnancy?" He shook his head. "Not until you told me during your appointments." By then, I couldn't say anything without risking everything. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to demand answers he couldn't give. But another part of me felt relief. At least now I knew the truth. After meeting with Dr. Porter, I made a decision. I was done letting others dictate my life. Whether it was Daniel's mistrust, Dr. Porter's carelessness, or society's judgmental gaze, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was me. I called Daniel and told him I was filing for separation. To his credit, he didn't fight me, at least not legally. Emotionally, though, he was a mess. "You're really doing this?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Yes," I replied, because staying would mean losing myself completely. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Leaving wasn't easy. It came with guilt, fear, and uncertainty, but it also came with freedom. With Daniel out of the picture, I focused on rebuilding. Eleanor helped me find a small studio apartment in Cambridge, close enough to work, but far enough from reminders of my old life. I threw myself into designing again, pouring my emotions into projects that brought beauty and light to spaces and to myself. Dr. Porter stepped away from medicine entirely, relocating to Vermont to start fresh. He sent me letters occasionally, apologizing and offering support if I ever needed it. I appreciated the gesture but kept my distance. Some wounds take time to heal. As for Ryan, we stayed in touch, meeting for coffee whenever he visited Boston. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people rediscovering each other. 9 months later, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Her name is Sophia, chosen because it means wisdom, something I learned a lot about during this journey. Holding her in my arms for the first time, I promised her something important. "You'll always know where you came from, sweetheart, but you'll never carry the weight of someone else's mistakes." Raising Sophia alone hasn't been easy, but it's taught me resilience, patience, and self-love. And while I'll always wonder what could have been, I know this. Sometimes, the hardest paths lead to the brightest futures. Life as a single mom wasn't what I'd planned, but it turned out to be exactly what I needed. Those early days with Sophia were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and endless cups of coffee. But amidst the chaos, I found a rhythm, a fragile but steady balance between surviving and thriving. I leaned heavily on my support system. Eleanor babysat when I had late client meetings. Maya brought over frozen meals and wine. And even my parents flew in from Chicago to help during those first overwhelming weeks. Slowly but surely, I began to realize that being alone didn't mean being unsupported. Professionally, something shifted too. Clients responded to the authenticity I poured into my designs, spaces that felt warm, inviting, and deeply personal. Word spread, and soon I was booking projects months in advance. For the first time in years, I felt proud, not just of my work, but of myself. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in. Late at night, rocking Sophia to sleep, I'd wonder if she'd resent me someday for the unconventional circumstances of her birth. Would she feel like she missed out on having two parents? Or would she understand that sometimes love looks different than we expect? Meanwhile, Daniel, well, he surprised me. After the initial shock wore off, he threw himself into therapy, working through his insecurities and control issues. He reached out occasionally, not to win me back, but to apologize sincerely for how he'd handled everything. "I'm so sorry, Sophie," he said during one phone call. "I let my fears destroy us, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." His words stung less now, softened by distance and time. I could hear the sincerity in his voice, and while forgiveness didn't come easily, I appreciated his effort. Eventually, he remarried a kind, patient woman named Grace who seemed to ground him in ways I never could. They sent holiday cards every year, complete with photos of their growing family. Seeing him happy should have hurt, but instead, it gave me closure. We weren't right for each other, not then, not now, but we'd both grown because of what happened. As for Dr. Porter, he faded quietly from my life. After relocating to Vermont, he opened a small practice focused on mental health counseling rather than fertility treatments. Occasionally, he'd send letters updating me on his new life, how he'd found peace hiking in the Green Mountains, or how helping patients navigate trauma had given him purpose again. I never responded to those letters, but I kept them tucked away in a drawer. Not because I harbored any lingering feelings for him, but because they reminded me of an important lesson. People aren't defined solely by their mistakes. Even Dr. Porter, whose actions had irrevocably changed my life, deserved grace for himself and for me. Sophia's first birthday was bittersweet. Bitter because it marked the end of her infancy, a fleeting chapter one wished I could freeze forever. Sweet because it symbolized all we'd overcome together. I threw a small party at my apartment, inviting only our closest friends and family. Maya baked a unicorn cake, complete with glittery frosting, and Eleanor made a scrapbook filled with photos documenting Sophia's first year. As I watched Sophia giggle and clap her chubby little hands, I felt a surge of gratitude for her, for my journey, and for the strength I discovered along the way. That evening, after everyone left, I sat on the couch flipping through the scrapbook. One photo caught my eye, Sophia nestled against my chest, fast asleep, her tiny hand curled around my finger. Beneath it, Eleanor had written, "Love builds futures." Tears welled up in my eyes, not sad ones, but hopeful ones. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we'd face them together. By the time Sophia turned 2, my life looked nothing like it had before. I'd launched my own design studio, focusing on creating spaces that celebrated individuality and resilience. Business was booming, and I hired a part-time assistant to help manage the workload. Socially, things were different too. Ryan and I reconnected sporadically, meeting for dinners or gallery openings whenever he visited Boston. There was no pressure, no labels, just easy conversation and shared laughter. It felt nice, comfortable, like slipping into your favorite sweater after a long day. One evening, as we strolled along the Charles River, Ryan stopped suddenly and turned to me. "You know, Sophie, you've always been extraordinary. But seeing you now, with Sophia, with your career, it's inspiring." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Maybe someday, Ryan and I would explore where this connection might lead. Or maybe we'd remain friends. Either way, I was okay with it. Because for the first time in years, I trusted myself to make the right choice. On Sophia's 3rd birthday, I decided to write her a letter. Not just a casual note, but a full-blown explanation of her unconventional beginnings, and the lessons I hoped she'd carry forward. "Dear Sophia, your story started with heartbreak. Yes, but also with hope, courage, and love. You taught me that families don't have to look a certain way to be whole. That trust isn't about perfection, it's about honesty and growth. And most importantly, that happiness isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. I won't lie to you. Life will be messy. People will disappoint you, and sometimes you'll disappoint yourself. But here's the secret. You're stronger than you think. Strong enough to rebuild, to forgive, and to dream bigger than anyone expects. No matter what happens, remember this, you are loved. Deeply, fiercely, unconditionally. And I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you exactly what that means. With all my heart, your mom. I tucked the letter into a keepsake box alongside her baby bracelet and a lock of hair from her first haircut. Someday, when she was ready, I'd share it with her. Until then, I keep building the life she deserved. One filled with light, laughter, and limitless possibilities. Years later, I ran into Daniel at a charity gala. He was older, softer around the edges, but still carried that air of quiet confidence. We exchanged polite smiles, catching up briefly about work, Sophia, and his stepchildren. "You've done amazing things, Sophie," he said sincerely. "I'm glad you found your footing." "Thank you," I replied, meaning it. "And thank you for letting me go. It wasn't easy, but it saved us both." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. Sometimes, the hardest choices are the ones that set us free. We parted ways amicably, two people who'd once been entangled but were now standing firmly on separate paths. Today, as I sit in my sunlit studio watching Sophia paint abstract masterpieces on butcher paper, I can't help but smile. Life isn't perfect, it never is, but it's ours. On the wall behind my desk hangs a framed quote. "Truth heals wounds, but love builds futures." Every time I glance at it, I'm reminded of how far we've come, how much we've grown. So here's my advice to anyone listening. If you're stuck in a story that no longer serves you, write a new one. Trust yourself, love yourself, and remember, you're the author of your own life. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories, and until next time, take care of yourselves.